Got any good stuff to talk about. First off, gentlemen, why don't you say we get right to a voicemail that we got in after we recorded last week's show, but about last week's episode.
Hi guys, it's Meg from Poughkeepsie. I listened to your podcast just now and just kind of agree with the people who called in and you all that the mid-season opening show was pretty blah and, I expected a little more, but some standouts for me, or one of the things, you made a comment about Carol not getting over her feelings that she has about her abusive husband who's long since dead, but long meaning maybe only a year ago. Abused people, male and female, take that abuse to their grave. They hurt for the rest of their lives. And even if they've had good therapy and maybe a good relationship with people and moved on, it's still always there. So Carol's definitely not over her horrible husband and his abuse of her and her daughter. But I thought her role, her acting was finally really it was a standout. She had a great scene with Beth, and her way that when she heard the news about Daryl not coming back, just really felt believable. Sometimes on the show, I find the acting to be pretty lacking and wanting, and Carol has been one of those that I've wanted more from, and I think she delivered. So I just wanted to put that out there, and thanks a lot for your podcast. I listen every week. Bye.
Well, thank you for your voicemail, Meg. I agree. Carol's acting really has stepped up last week's episode and this week's episode, as we'll talk about. Some good scenes there.
Her comments were well-founded. I like the fact that Carol's stepping up a little bit. It's interesting, too, because she's not Melissa McBride is not listed as like a starring cast member. She's like an also starring, so she doesn't have her name on the front credits. But it seems like she has a larger role than what's being portrayed in the credits. So, which I think has to do with her monetary participation. So I hope that doesn't mean that she's not going to be around for very much longer. And maybe with season 4 she'll get a promotion. But yeah, as far as what Meg was saying specifically, I totally agree. I mean, I don't think that she's over her deceased husband and his brutality. I think she's just got enough to occupy her mind and to take her mind off of her past and to just focus on the present and the future.
It seems unfair that Sarah Wayne Callies' character has been dead, and yet Melissa McBride's character is still in the secondary credits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, what does she have to do? Does she have to die again in the main credit sequence or what? I think she's pretty. I don't know. I think she's a pretty strong actress. I always have. I think it's a good role, and Meg's statement is definitely well-founded as far as abused people and their abusers. But I mean, there's like we're going to get into in this episode tonight. There are a lot of really good Carol moments. She really is becoming a mainstay and a pillar of the group.
All right, so without any further ado, what do you say we get into this week's episode discussion, gentlemen?
Sounds like a plan.
Alrighty. Season 3, episode 11 is entitled, I Ain't a Judas. And we start off at the prison, and after the governor's awesome attack last week, Herschel wants to abandon the prison, but Merle suggests it's now too late for that, as they don't have enough ammunition to clear the yard, and if they were going to do it, they should have done it the night before, at least in his opinion. Rick and Glenn, however, they argue that the group should stay, and when Rick walks away, Herschel yells at Rick to get his head clear so they can lead him, and then later even Carl suggests that Rick should possibly step down and get some rest, and let Herschel and Daryl run things for a while.
That great scene right before the opening credits where Carl kind of takes Rick. Rick is off by himself, and Carl comes to join him and tells him, maybe you should take a break, maybe you should step down for a while. Great scene between those two, and kind of a long time coming. I'm glad we're starting to see the end of Crazy Rick because the way things are going, we kind of need the Rick dictatorship to kick back in, I guess.
Yeah, I wasn't on last week, obviously, but I thought that was an awesome way to wake him up and to get his head back in the game is that attack by the governor, and it just that just had me, like I said, I guess I don't want to go too much on last week, but I'll just say it just had me at the edge of my seat, like very few episodes of the show have had to that degree. So it was pretty amazing.
So we then head over to Woodbury, where they are arming the town, and they're going through and seeing who can fight. They've got about 20 adults who are in a good condition to join in the battle. They have another 6 or so who are unfit but can carry a weapon at least, and they also decide to open it up to children as young as 10, I believe it was, or 9? No, 13.
Adolescence is a 20th century creation. According
to the governor, which is pretty much true. The whole concept of teenager wasn't a thing until the 60s. And so they start going through the town and recruiting people, and including Karen's son, Noah, who has asthma, which gets brought up quite a bit. And this, of course, obviously freaks Andrea out because they're having child soldiers all of a sudden, and she says, you need to let me leave over to the prison and see if I can negotiate peace with Rick. But the governor says, you can go, but if you go, stay there. You're not welcome back here.
There's that scene with the grandmother who has the arthritis, who comes out for gun duty, and the governor's kind of walking around assessing, his troops as it were. The grandmother puts out her hands, and the Melton's like, oh, this is the woman with arthritis, and the governor lets her go. I was like, for a minute there, I was like, are they going to hand her an AK and try to enlist her too? I mean, you wonder how far the governor's willing to go.
But he still makes Noah and the other kids join up.
Right.
So later on, Andrea goes to Milton, and she asks him, well, I guess technically he comes to her, but she talks to him, and she asks if he can help her sneak out. And he agrees that he will after she kind of forces him to and twists his wrist a little bit. But then we see next scene that Milton goes to the governor, and just like the governor asked him, keep an eye on Andrea, and tells him what's going on. But the governor decides to give her a little bit of space, and he tells Milton to go along with her, help her get out, and then come back and let her know what's going on.
Now, I was wondering, why did Andrea confide in Milton? I'm just wondering why Andrea couldn't sneak out on her own. It just seems like that, bringing him into it is just, accruing more, baggage, as it were. You know what I mean? It's not really helpful.
I didn't get the impression that she was asking him to come along the first time just for him to cover for her and help her get past the guards or whatever.
Yeah, same with me. I mean, I guess, we saw Andrea came in, the way she did, the way her and Michonne did. I didn't take it that she had a whole lot of familiarity with the area around where they were. I think she feels like maybe her and Milton bonded, and that she sees in Milton that maybe he isn't quite on board with the governor in his twisted ways, that he's, for the most part, a man of reason, a man of science, and that maybe she would be able to confide in him that he would do the right thing. But he's just a weird dude, man. I can't put my finger on his character and what it is. Maybe it's the properness of him at times, but he's just such an odd bird.
Well, he's a book-smart person, at least from what we've seen, who has no real physical power of his own and has to rely on other people. And in this case, he hitches his horse to the governor, and he's going to stick there as long as he has to, because the governor's the one who can keep him safe and keeps him around and seems to like him. We haven't seen the governor go off on Milton, I don't think. And, that's who he needs to stay alive in this apocalypse, because he sure is not going to be able to do it on his own.
And that's how the governor knows that he's absolutely loyal, is because he's dependent on the governor. He couldn't survive without the governor, and the system that he's imposed on Woodbury, he could not do it all, like Jordan said, on his own. So that's how the governor knows that he's completely on his side.
It's also possible, we don't know the extent of Milton's experiments. The governor may have dirt on him on things Milton has done that if the people of Woodbury found out, they would not like it so much. We really don't know. Granted, a lot of that would probably be at the governor's behest, things he would do, but not necessarily all of them.
Right.
So we head out into the wood with Milton and Andrea. Andrea and Milton capture a zombie, They knock it down. They hack off its arms, or Andrea hacks off its arms while Milton holds it down. And then Andrea runs over, grabs a rock, sticks it under its face, and curb stomps its teeth out. She's basically making one of Michonne's guard dogs for herself.
I would like to ask that we call this act "Doing the Michonne," because that's exactly what I was thinking when I was watching. I'm like, oh, she's going to Michonne that one. We can make Michonne a verb, so doing Michonne.
So while they're doing this, or right as they're done doing it, who should pop out of the woods but Tyrese and his group? And they're a bit put off at first until Andrea explains more or less why they're doing what they're doing. And Milton agrees to take Tyrese and his group back to Woodbury, and Andrea leaves with the Michonne Walker for the prison.
It's amazing how close Woodbury and the prison are to each other now. They're literally like one commercial break away from one another. Like the people keep, it's like the only two places in the universe are Woodbury and the prison. People keep coming back and forth.
Well, we know how far away they were from Woodbury when they Michonne the zombie, and Tyrese and his group had about 24 hours, I'd say minimum, to get from the prison to where they were. So
it's just funny how, and I know, again, suspension of disbelief, it's more, I guess, akin to like a comic book thing, but how these people just kind of randomly chance into each other all the time. And we saw it with Merle, we see it, now with Tyrese in this group. It's like, out of all of the random routes and passages and ways you could take to get from point A to point B, it seems like these people keep taking the right passage to cross with each other. I just find it funny. Like I said, it's not one of those things that I get too hung up about, because it is television, it is, part of the narrative, and it's just how they're going to tell the story.
Right, absolutely. So back at the prison, Glenn, goes over and suggests they hand Merle over to the governor. Maybe that could appease him. But Merle basically says that this isn't going to work. He's going to, want to kill me first. This isn't going to help anything. And then he goes over and he tries to make good with Michonne and half-heartedly apologize for what he had done, saying he was just doing the governor's orders. And I love the line where she says, "Oh, like the Gestapo." And he's like, "Yeah, exactly."
Well, there are two really good scenes, one with Merle one-on-one with another character. There's the one you're referring to with him and Michonne, where, Denai Guerrero gives a little bit more than just her normal scowling Michonne performance. We'll see later her big mic drop performance. But also the quoting of Bible scripture back and forth between Herschel and Merle. That was a really good scene, a lot of understated acting there. And, Merle's trying to, fit in or trying to relate to these people in some way. It's such a movie trope, too. Whenever someone quotes Bible scripture, one character, they're going to quote back the rest of the scripture and know the verse.
It is a pretty well-known verse, though. I mean, it's not, John 3:16 level or something, but it's,
but still, Rooker and Wilson were really great in that scene. And then later, Rooker and Garrow with, when he confronts Michonne while she's doing her workout. It's just a couple of really good character scenes. It just gives you the power of Michael Rooker, man. He's a really good actor.
Yeah, and it's really cool to see him get to interact with the rest of the cast when in, his few appearances in season 1 and season 2 in the Dream State, of course, he only interacted with a couple of them. So it's cool to see that the rest of them get a chance to bounce things off of him. Now, I had a question for you guys about that scene, actually, between Herschel and Merle. After Merle quotes the scripture back at Herschel, he basically goes, Woodbury had a big library, and that was one of the only things I miss about it. But I don't really think, at least my opinion, he knew that long before he was at Woodbury. That's the kind of thing that I have a feeling Merle might kind of know. We don't know too much about his background, but I got the impression he was just trying to cover with, I only learned it recently.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a good assessment of what's going on, because being able to memorize Bible scripture like that usually at a young age, I don't think it's something you just picked up in Woodbury.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing, Jordan. I didn't get the impression that, like you said, I think he was covering for whatever reason to Herschel.
So it's right about this time that Carl spots someone coming out of the woods, and Maggie takes aim with her rifle, and she sees that it's Andrea. So they open up the gate and let her in, and then immediately knock her down on her knees, throw her up against a wall, and if they had handcuffs, I'm sure they'd use them, but basically they take her into custody.
Well, after the sneak attack last episode, they're not going to take any chances.
Right.
Even though it is Andrea, you know what I mean?
But they finally bring her inside. They catch up on who's dead, who's alive. Some things have happened since she's been away, and she warns them that Woodbury is ready for a war, and she wants to instead, garner peace. But no one really believes that the governor's going to accept a truce.
Andrea's trying to be Picard. Rick is trying to be Kirk.
And Merle is the Gordon.
She comes in. First of all, the scene where she walks in, everyone sees it's Andrea. The look that Carl gives Andrea is not a welcoming look. If you go back to that scene and look at it, it's a really good, just like the 1,000-yard stare at Andrea as she comes in. And then, Andrea's trying to say that, we have to broker this peace. We have to, if we don't, we're all going to die. And the response from Glenn and Rick is like, bring it on. It was a great scene. I like that a lot of the stuff got caught up and cleared away. All the stuff Andrea didn't know about what happened with the group and all that stuff. All that kind of plot clutter, as it were, got swept away in that scene. I was happy to see that.
I laughed at Aaron's post on Facebook. He says, "Review in progress," but Michonne responded with, quote, "nothing," unquote, to a question involving how much he told people, making it the most accurate statement Michonne has ever said. I laughed at that one because Andrew's like, "What did you tell them? Like, you're so mad at me."
I was happy that Michonne did more than just scowl and grimace this episode. We got to see a few good scenes with her. The scene with her and Andrea in just a little bit where they confront one another it was really, I thought, not only well choreographed, well shot, but also very well acted between those two.
Yeah. So Rick says, if you really want to help us, you'll help us get inside Woodbury so we can kill the governor, but she refuses. And then we have that scene later on between Michonne and Andrea that you're talking about, Jim, where Michonne tells Andrea the governor sent Merle to kill her, and that if you would come with me, he would have sent him after you too. He's not going to let anyone out who wasn't under his control. And Michonne then tells Andrea, I went back into Woodbury to expose the governor so you would see what happened. And then she says the phrase, and I knew it would hurt you. And I've seen conflicting interpretations of that online. So what did you guys take it as? Did you take it as, I did this because I knew it would hurt you, or I did it despite knowing it would hurt you?
Well, she also has that line about you traded a friend for a warm bed,
yeah,
which I thought was pretty damning, and at that point I almost expected like a mic drop. Her to just walk off,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think that, she was trying to wake her up. Sometimes you wake someone up with by not only exposing the hypocrisy of the people around them, like Michonne was trying to do, but also by I don't know, like almost like a physical attrition by teaching somebody something, painful lesson. As the saying is. So I think that's what she was trying to do. I didn't read too much into like some of the other people.
Yeah, it's such a weird relationship that they have to begin with, and then to add this, to keep adding complexity to it. And I think to some degree we're still trying to figure out what Michonne's deal is and what Andrea's deal is. Michonne more just out of mystery. Like we're still trying to figure, what her motive is, what her angle is, why she's so secretive, why doesn't she ever give a straight answer to anything. With Andrea, I think we're just trying to figure out, like, is she trying to get in close to ultimately betray the governor? Is she really want to try and make it work at Woodbury, even if it means she's going to have to sacrifice a bit of herself? What's really going on there?
I don't think she knows. I don't think she even knows. The very last scene of this episode tells us that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't even think the character herself knows like where she belongs.
So before we continue on with the rest of our synopsis, Jim, why don't you tell us about our wonderful sponsor?
Well, our sponsor, as always, are the wonderful people at DCBService.com. That's discountcomicbookservice.com. And if you are interested in The Walking Dead, because you're listening to this podcast, I imagine you would be, and you want to check out the graphic novels, the comics, the T-shirts, the action figures, all the great pop culture stuff that goes with The Walking Dead, you can find it at DCBService.com. You can also find a wide array of graphic novels, comic books, other pop culture items, as I said, and they have a lot of great specials going on right now. First of all, I'd like to recommend right off the bat IDW's Star Trek Countdown to Darkness trade paperback. There's a new Star Trek movie coming out this summer. You may have heard of it, Star Trek Into Darkness. This is a story that takes place before that. It's co-written by one of the screenwriters of the new Star Trek movie, Roberta Orci, and it's actually pretty good stuff, especially if you're an old school Star Trek fan. There's a lot of cool nods to the original continuity all through it. That's 50% off at DCB Service this month. And also, you can order all the Marvel Now titles. Marvel just relaunched a lot of other titles with all new number ones. They shuffle around all the creative teams, and a lot of really cool comics coming out of that. All the Marvel Now titles this month, from this month's pre-orders as a bundle are 50% off. That comes to $70.81. And if you're a first-time customer at DCB Service and you use the code WD8, then you get another 8% off on top of that. So you're getting insane amounts of money off your orders, and they have a wide variety of stuff. If you want to catch up on Walking Dead and trade paperbacks in the comics and the compendiums, they have them in all the various permutations there at deep discounted prices.
Thank you very much, sir. So back at Woodbury, we meet up with the governor again, and guess who's there? Hey, it's Tyrese and his group. They're in the infirmary, the same place Michonne and Andrea were brought the first time they got there. And the governor gives him, his "Hey, welcome to Woodbury" speech. He discusses what they've been through, and then Alan happens to mention offhand that they've been at the prison, and they were chased out by this crazy guy called Rick. And Tyrese gives the governor pretty much the same offer he made to Rick, which was, "Hey, you want us to help out and earn our keep, and that'll earn us some beds here." And the governor asks Tyrese if he could provide a layout of the prison, and Tyrese says he'll do his best, even though it's pretty confusing. And the whole time, the governor keeps giving leering, longing glances at Tyrese's sister Sasha. So that was a little creepy.
Well, he's probably getting tired of Andrea. It's been a whole 3 or 4 episodes, so he has to move on. He's the alpha male, right?
Gotcha.
And this comes just because of being such a fan of the comic. It bothers me to see Rick versus Tyrese. It just does. Just the idea that Rick might be fighting against Tyrese just kind of bothers me. So,
but I think the way it's happening has been pretty, I don't know if organic's the right word, but everything lines up pretty well for the show. And I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago, but just the whole, because in the TV show universe, Rick meets Tyrese after the governor and not before, it totally changes the dynamic. So everything is changed up plot-wise, but character-wise, everything still works. And Tyrese here is not doing this out of malice. He's just doing it as, hey, there's a crazy guy over at this prison and a bunch of people who otherwise are really nice. Maybe we should go over and kill the crazy guy and save the people and bring him over here to this nice town where this nice governor guy is willing to help us out. And I think it works really well, and I did enjoy the scene quite a bit.
I agree it fits with this version of the story and stuff. It fits in perfectly. I'm just saying that, we said it a million times, if it were word, chapter and verse in the comic, it would be boring to watch each week. It's just strange for me to see these two characters pitted against one another.
Oh, I gotcha.
One thing that I noticed, and maybe I'm reading a little bit into it too much. Maybe I want to try and read too much into it, but I forgot. I've brain lapsed. The lady that's with Tyrese,
Sasha, his sister.
Sasha. There was at the end of that sequence. After the governor walks out and they kind of have their spiel, Tyrese says something, and then she looks at him, and it's almost like she's ready to say something, and they do like a hard edit right there. And part of me was wondering if maybe they're not there by accident, that maybe they have an ulterior motive, that maybe Tyrese has something planned that we just don't know about yet. Maybe Herschel or Carl or somebody said something to them before they left, because the last we saw of them was when Rick kind of lost it and just told them, go on, get out, get away, and everybody just kind of left. So I'm curious if, like I said, maybe I'm reading too much into it or not, that maybe there might be something else going on with that group.
I think that could be really cool.
By the way, we glossed over the scene with the governor in his match.
Oh, yes, thank you, Jim.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't remember that until now.
Me neither. And let me reread my own post from the Facebook wall, because it's absolutely true. The match scene had my sister running in from the other room to see what could have possibly caused me to be audibly grossed out, because I let out, oh my gosh, when he lit that match and held it up to his eye. And she was like, if something in this show is grossing you out, I've got to see it myself. And then she was also very, very grossed out. I don't know that a match would be particularly effective at cauterizing a wound like that, but just the thought of it was, just makes my spine crawl.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good makeup effect. I thought it looked suitably disgusting.
Did it seem like the glass was still in his eye?
I think it was more there's just a cut in his eye. I didn't notice any glass, but I do seem to remember the doctor lady saying something along the lines of she couldn't get it all out. But that was so long ago, I can't remember for sure.
It just, and I wasn't watching it in high def, but in looking at it, it looked like in the dead center there was almost, and again it's hard to tell because I'm sure they're trying to make it look like this nasty wound, but it looked like there was a like what looked like glass, like a round small piece of glass, like dead center, almost again like it was broken off, and nobody bothered to kind of go in there and pull that out. But yeah, it was pretty gnarly.
Yeah, there was that. I know what you mean. There's something reflecting in there. Reflecting light. I don't know if that was meant to be like maybe the back of his retina that was still left in there, something viscous, or rather like you said, something glass. But I know what you mean.
And since we mentioned it last week on the show, and they mentioned it on The Talking Dead this week, I thought I would point out before we get any tweets or Facebook posts or voicemails or emails about it. They did not reverse the shot for the governor's eye, because some people definitely noticed that it changed sides. He was just looking into a mirror with the whole match bit, which did throw me off at first, but then I quickly picked up, oh, okay, I see what was going on. There's a mirror behind him.
Yeah, it was funny. I think it was either before it started or maybe it was like next on The Walking Dead or like a preview. They showed that, and I was like, surely they weren't dumb enough to not reverse a shot and leave it the wrong eye. And then I thought about it for a second before it even came on, and I was like, it's got to be he's looking in a mirror. And sure enough, when you saw what he was doing, what was going on, that's obviously what happened.
Yep. So back at the prison, Andrea has been led inside the main sleeping quarters, and she's holding Judith for the first time, talking with Carol. And this was another great Carol scene where Carol pretty much lays it all out and says, "What you need to do is go back to Woodbury, sleep with the governor, give him the best night of his life, and then slit his throat."
This is the Carol scene I was referring to earlier in the episode. Just really awesomely acted. She was from being incredibly maternal and then kind of telling Andrea what had happened, and then to just bloodthirsty cutthroat on the turn of time. I thought it was a really good scene.
So after Carol tells her that, we then cut to later on that day or the next day. It's not entirely clear, I don't think. And they get Andrea a car, and they say their goodbyes. Rick gives her a knife and a gun, and she drives back to Woodbury.
There's a shot I just want to mention really quick. When Andrew's driving up to the gate, there's one shot that looks back, and it's almost the entire cast except for Merle, all in one shot. And I would love to see a picture of that, or maybe I can figure out how to do a screen capture of that. It was just really framed well. Daryl and Rick were like the two largest figures in it, but the whole cast was there in one shot. It would have been a great production photo.
Which is pretty rare.
Right.
You don't normally have them all in one shot like that. Yeah, that's right. I'll have to go back and look for that one. So she gets back to Woodbury. She gets past the guards eventually. As soon as she gets there, they'll point her weapons at her. And next time we see her, she's in the governor's mansion. She tells them what happened, more or less. They start making out. They head back to the bedroom, and then we catch back up with them after the governor's asleep at least. And Andrea wakes up. She gets out of bed. The governor, I think he looks around a little bit when she's not looking and sees that she's getting out of bed. She goes over. She grabs a knife. She walks around to the other side of the bed where he is. She holds the knife out. She looks at him. He holds still, so if he's aware of what's going on, he's holding on to the last second before he makes his move. And then she can't do it. She walks back. She looks out the window, and the episode ends.
Well, there's the scene of Beth singing the Tom Waits song, Hold On.
Which that was a gorgeous rendition.
And Rick tells Daryl and Herschel that he and Michonne and Carl are going to go on hunting, like a scouting trip. He doesn't say, it's implied they're going to look for supplies, but he doesn't say for sure whether it's going to be for, I didn't know whether to take it to mean they're going to go look for more supplies or whether they're going to go scout, Woodbury.
Could be both. I mean, Daryl did tell him earlier that they were running low on food and stuff, so they might make a pit stop and do both in one trip. But yeah, that whole last scene with Andrea and everything's all intercut with those scenes, and it just plays really, really well. I especially like how they went from Beth singing to the actual Tom Waits version 3/4 of the way through, I guess. But it all played very well.
Well, did you guys think the governor was awake through that whole thing where she's standing with the knife?
Yeah.
Was he awake?
Yeah, I think he was just biding his time, hoping she wouldn't do it. But if she did go to to actually stab him, I was figuring he was going to grab the knife and turn it on her.
I almost thought, again, for a minute that he was going to just pull out a gun and blow her away. I'm not. I guess because they made such a big deal about Andrea in this episode, it was so centered around her. And then that bit at the end, I was half expecting her not to make it through.
Yeah, it would have both surprised me and not surprised me, but it would have been a ballsy move for either of them to die in that scene, I thought.
Yeah, I was pretty convinced it wasn't going to be the governor. Like I said before on the show, I think he's in it for the somewhat long haul. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if he makes it through even season 4, or maybe gets it at the end of season 4 or season 5. But I don't anticipate him dying this season at all. But I like the bit with Rick back in the prison, especially the scene he had with Daryl, because he goes on about Merle, and I think the group has come to realize that it is what it is. That if they had their way, they would flip him out to the walkers and let him fend for himself, or give him back to the governor, as a peace offering. But I think they realize that he does have his usefulness. They can keep him at arm's length. But I like that Rick told Daryl, keep an eye on things. I need you to keep things safe. But if he flips out, it's on you. That basically, I'll tolerate Merle being here, but if anything happens and he hurts anybody, it's your ass. So I thought that was really cool. And then the bit with him when he said he's going to take Michonne and take Carl, I thought that was awesome, because I think he's really starting to realize that that Carl is not just a little boy. That Carl's capable. He needs to treat Carl more like a man. And also, I think he's ready to start trusting Michonne a little more and find out what is she really about. And I think if they spend some quote unquote quality time together, that he'll figure out that they need to either cut her loose or bring her into the fold.
Yeah, he says that line about Carl where he goes, yeah, he's ready. So he really is. Yeah. I mean, especially like with the scene with them at the beginning, really is punctuating it for him that Carl's not a little boy anymore. Carl is a member of this group.
So, gentlemen, what are your Buster ratings for this week's episode?
I will give it 3 Busters. To me, it was just kind of an average episode. In the lower ranking, I guess 3 is not horrible, but it was kind of a necessary episode. I mean, the ending of the previous episode was such an emotional roller coaster with just all of the action and everything going on and being at the edge of your seat. I guess we needed kind of one to just kind of take a little bit of a breather, to reorganize, to talk things out, and to kind of settle a little bit. The main criticism I have with this episode was just the Andrea bits. I think having her rehash, that T-Dog is dead and Lori's dead, and what happened with Shane, it just seemed like it was kind of treading ground again. That it's like, okay, we've been there. That her visit to the prison didn't really break any new ground, and it could be that that'll play itself out, and we'll see what her real motive was for kind of flipping back and forth. But it just seemed like we just kind of spun our wheels a little bit in this episode, and we didn't really learn a whole lot new.
I just want a 4 out of 5 Busters. I enjoyed it because it cleared out a lot of the things. When is Andrea going to meet the group again? When is she going to find out about all these things? I didn't mind that they went over some of that stuff with her and just to get that out of the way, so like everybody's up to speed now. Everybody knows where everybody is. I take 1 point off because and after last week I understand. Last week the whole last 10 minutes was nothing but a giant action sequence. So I understand the kind of except for the scene where she did the Michonne, there really wasn't a lot of Walker stuff going on here. So I'm going to take a point off for that. But other than that, that was a decent episode. Like Russ said, it was the episode that needed to happen to progress the story a little further. And I'm glad they were able to wrap it all up in one episode rather than if it had been more laconic pace, more episodes. The pace seems to be still going on pretty quickly, and everything looks like it's turning to a head by the end of the season. So I give it a 4 out of 5.
And I will give it a 4.25. I actually really enjoyed this episode. Yes, not a lot actually happened, but this was for me an example of a slower paced episode that was still very interesting. I mean, I know a lot of people are unhappy with Andrea's story, but I was captivated by the whole episode. I thought they gave a suitably tense atmosphere for pretty much the whole episode that kept me interested, kept me invested, and generally made it a positive experience of an episode for me. So I think this is the tone they need to shoot for when they do the quieter episodes. Tense, lots of things could happen. None of them necessarily need to. She doesn't need to kill the governor. He doesn't need to kill her. Zombies don't need to be getting killed left and right, but that feeling of tension is what really sold the episode for me. So 4.25. And I believe Brad sent in a Buster rating for us as well, since he wasn't able to be here tonight.
He did. He texted me his Buster rating of 4.25.
Hey, I'm on the same page with Brad for once.
Yeah. He didn't elaborate, but that was his rating.
So before we get to Aaron's review, his short review for the episode, Jim, why don't you tell us what the people on Facebook, on our Facebook group, Walking Dead TV, search that on Facebook, you'll find it. It's awesome. What did they have to say about this week's episode?
Okay, we have a very active Facebook group, like Jordan said. Everard Santa Maria gave it a 3.75. Toothless, Armless, Guide Zombies. I actually liked it a lot as a lot of the pieces fell into place. Heather Campbell Fitch gave it a 3.5. Philip Herb gave it 4 T-Dogs. It seems Andrea's main purpose on the show is to try our patience. And a lot of people like that on the group. Mike Jones gave it 4 Prison Songs out of 5. Mary Turk Pachia gave it 3 Michonne Push-Ups. Leslie Johnson gave it a 4. I did think it was a great episode for the most part, moved all the characters forward. The pace felt more on target for an episode of The Walking Dead should be. So, definitely in the same range as us. David Gleason gives it only a 2 out of 5, the second worst episode of the entire series. It was so disjointed, it seemed terribly rushed, with terrible writing. I don't know if I agree with all that there. John Heffernan gave it a 2.5. I understand that episodes like this are necessary to advance the story, but being the follow-up to last week's incredible finish really made this one seem weak. Lisa Gonzalez gave it a 3.5. Luke Smith, our friend from across the pond from Luke Smith FX, gave it a 3 out of 5. I think this is just building up for the next. Nick Muse also gave it a 3.5. So a lot of mixed reviews on this episode, a lot more than I thought. As Jordan said, if you'd like to join in on the fun, we have a pretty active Facebook group, community at the Walking Dead TV Podcast on the Facebooks. Look it up and find us.
And what did our good friend Aaron from the Out Now with Aaron A podcast, which you can find at hhwlod.com, have to say this week about The Walking Dead, Russ?
He said, "Hey dudes, so this week we got the Andrea Hour, and I can't say I was really thrilled by that concept, let alone the episode in general. When Walking Dead is at its best, I can be happy with an episode that's focused on the characters, but unfortunately Andrea is the most problematic character on the show, so I can't say I had much attachment to her plight throughout this episode, despite the interesting idea of having her meet up with her former group. This felt like stalling more than anything else, and I can only hope that the more interesting characters make up the central plot points for the next few episodes before the inevitable prison/Woodbury showdown. I'll stop there. Do you guys think that this season we're going to get the big showdown between the prison and Woodbury, or do you think they're going to let this stew out a little longer?"
I think we will definitely get a big showdown between the two before the season's out. I don't know that I'll say that I expect it to necessarily be the final one or play out like it did in the comics. I kind of agree with you that this could go on for a season or two past this season, but I don't know that it necessarily will. But I think we'll get at least a big battle between the two.
Yeah, I agree. I think there'll be some sort of resolution to the storyline by the end of the season to be the hook or the cliffhanger into the next season. But I don't know if it'll be, like Jordan said, a decisive conclusion.
Interesting. So he continues on the plus side. I am most interested in seeing how things play out for Merle. Not sure how trusting I would be of him given that Rick allows him to carry a gun and help him out during the episode, but at least I have no idea where this is really going. So far, the second half of the third season has been lacking for me, so I hope things heat up soon. It's not a matter of pacing, I just wish I could like all of these characters in terms of how they are written as opposed to just some of them. Example, Carol and Daryl have one scene together, but it's well written and acted. Meanwhile, Andrea has a whole A-plot for this episode and it leaves me cold. Walker action is fun and all, but if AMC wants to say characters matter here, I want to see that ring true on the series as a whole. 3 out of 5 busters. P.S. Should we go back to season 2 and see if Beth has a Tom Waits poster in her room?
I don't think she had any posters in her room. It was very stereotypical farmhouse, but that would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely makes some good points. I kind of give my comments on the whole, A-plot Andrea thing. I think it was just one of those things that, even though it slowed things down a bit, was just necessary. It's kind of like the Star Trek 3 of the series for this episode.
Is Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon around?
That would be awesome.
He makes an awesome Klingon.
Indeed he does.
Russ, I believe you also have 2 emails from other listeners this week. Why don't you read the first one of those to us?
All right, here we go. The first one's from Angel, and he says, "Hey guys, welcome back. It's been super busy at work, so getting time to listen and respond has been difficult, but Queen of the Puds Attacks is back as well. This is Suicide King. When you guys were discussing how easy it seems to have become to kill a walker with just a good stomping, you need to keep in mind that the apocalypse has been going on for a good while now, and many of the walkers have been deteriorating for a while. Thus, the skull would be a whole lot softer than a human skull, right? I don't know. I mean, even if it's deteriorating, I don't think the skull is going to get thinner. I mean, I think the skull stays pretty solid over time, but I think it's just one of those things that just, something about stomping a skull and seeing everything kind of ooze just kind of grosses you out and it's cool at the same time, at least for me.
Yep, I'd rather it be slightly physiological untrue and awesome than physiologically true and just kind of boring.
Yep. The heart of good storytelling is embellishment, after all.
Exactly.
And we can embellish with a hatchback. There's nothing better.
Here.
Also, it's almost annoying that during The Talking Dead, Stephen Yeun and Chris Hardwick kept talking about Maggie being violated. I suppose if Glenn does believe that Maggie was raped, Stephen was staying in character until his past week's episode where she came out and told him blow by blow what happened. Way to go, Stephen.
Well, I mean, it's a violation whether there was an actual rape or not. Her personal space was certainly violated, regardless of what happened on or off screen. I mean, what we saw alone was a violation, just a different definition of one.
Yeah, no, I agree. Home. All I can say about this week's show is that in a way I can understand Maggie's attitude towards Glenn when it comes to her attack. A female's perspective would be that she needs to own the situation, to come to terms with what happened, and Glenn's anger and reaction may have made her feel that he was making it too much about himself. Just saying. You guys said last show that Glenn hustled Tyrese's group off to a different part of the prison when Rick wigged out. But if that were so, where were they during the big shootout? I wondered that myself, then thought that they fled the prison thinking they were not welcomed. Otherwise, even though they did not have weapons, they would have at least tried to help out, so they most likely show up eventually.
I think we were just speculating that could be what happened, but obviously we know the real answer now.
Yeah. For those of us obsessed with the show, we knew Axel was about to die when he showed up in the black shirt and not the prison overalls. A photo had been leaked showing Carol leaning over someone who had been shot in the head. That said, great job, guys. Love having you back. Angel.
Yeah, I generally try to stay away from spoiler photos like that, so thankfully I did not have it ruined for me.
Yeah, me too.
Who sent in the other email this week, Russ?
Our last email this week comes in from Heather. So she says, "Hi guys, I was somewhat disappointed mostly because of the Andrea story. I know we talk often about suspending our disbelief because this is, after all, a zombie show. One of the things I love about the show is the fact that most of the time the way the characters deal with the fantastical elements of the show is reasonable and realistic. Sometimes if a reaction doesn't seem realistic to us at first, we can further dissect it and usually end up with justifying the behavior. Maybe you could say that the show has been unrealistically realistic so far. Not sure now. Parts of season 3 are getting a little far-fetched. I like lots of parts of this episode and have liked the intensity and the drama in this season very much, but I'm just not getting the Andrea/Governor story. Each week it gets a little worse. He said, if you go to the prison, stay there. Yet when she came back, he comforted her and took her to bed and showed no signs of distrust or disappointment in her. Am I missing something? The only justification I could come up with that is that he is going to use her in some way to get to the prison group, especially now that he has Tyrese on board. He had to show her that he still cared about her and was not in fact angry at her for going to the prison just so he could keep her around and on his side. Maybe the whole thing would have made more sense if they had been able to spend more time explaining the governor's apparent change of heart. I know you only have so much time to explore things in a TV show, though, and some things would have to be left to the viewer's imagination. Usually I'm fine with that and enjoy putting the pieces together myself, but for me the pieces are just not fitting together right now. Also, Milton went from reluctantly agreeing, did he ever agree really, to cover for Andrea while she snuck off to the prison to go with her and actually helping her catch a zombie. She should have seen through that. If he was reluctant to even cover for her because of his fear of the governor, there's no way in hell he would have actually gone with her and helped her. Lastly, how did she and Milton even know how to get to the prison? I like everything else, especially Merle's conversation with Herschel and Rick's initial reaction to Andrea. At first that seemed out of line to me, but the more I thought about it, the more I could see where Rick was coming from there. I guess Rick is ignoring Carl's suggestion. Anyway, thanks for doing what you do, Heather.
All right, a lot of stuff to unpack there. Let's see, where should we start? How they got to the prison, how they knew where it was. Well, if they know it's a prison, all they have to do is find a map and find the nearest prison, so that shouldn't be too difficult. As for the governor's motivation, that's one of those things that doesn't really bother me simply because I assume it's one of those things that will be explained in the first 5 minutes of next week's episode, you know what I mean? Or, some point during the rest of the season. I'm fine with being in the dark as to why he did what he did, because this is an Andrea-focused episode, and she was in the dark. So that just puts us in her shoes and helps convey the uncertainty and the general tension. So that works for me.
There's that old saw about keeping your friends close and your enemies closer. If he can't trust Andrea, at least she's there under his thumb where he can keep an eye on her. I think that's that's part of it too. She makes some good, some decent points. I thought a lot of what she said, while I was watching the show. So, good email there. Thanks.
So that's pretty much it for this episode. We, of course, are going to have our short, slightly spoilery preview for next week's episode after the ending here, so stick around and, you never know, might be some bloopers at the end. I don't know myself. I won't know until I edit it. Anyway, if you'd like to leave us a voicemail, and we'd certainly like you to, you can do so at 516-468-7912. That's 516-468-7912, or send us an email, comments@walkingdeadtv.com, and you can always send us an MP3 faux voicemail there as well if you'd like. Don't forget you can check out all of our shows at hhwlod.com. That's, of course, where you can also find Aaron's full written review, which is, of course, longer and much more in-depth, and always good about this week's episode and every week's episode. And you can check out his podcast there, Out Now with Aaron and Abe, Half Hour Wasted, Legion of Dudes, PKD Black Box, and more. You can follow us on Twitter at WDTV Podcast and at HHWLOD_network. And so until there's no more room in hell and the dead walk the earth, remember, Michonne, it's not just a noun anymore. Have a good week, everybody. And next week on The Walking Dead, like I said, spoilers, next week's episode is entitled Clear. And the synopsis we have from AMC is, realizing they are heavily outgunned against the governor's forces, Rick leads an expedition to get more weapons. So I guess now we know what he was really planning on doing.
And in the clip, the preview clip, they show, it looks like it's going to be, Rick, Michonne, and Carl-centric episode pretty much. But somebody covers Rick with sniper fire, and there was some speculation on the Facebook group that it might be Morgan, which would be a great throwback to season 1. So. And
he's an awesome actor, so hopefully it is him. Hopefully he sticks around, but we won't know for sure until Sunday. So we'll talk to you again next week. Have a good one, everybody.
Curse you, Red Baron.
It's no rush. I'll cut this part out.
Well, good. Make some bloopers then.
Oh, I need to go to bed so bad.
Working for the man's getting you down.
I just didn't get a lot of sleep last night.
Yeah, what's her name?